The Kevin Long Show, a product of the Southgate Media Group. You can find us at southgatemediagroup.com. Music is Masters of Disorder by Kevin McClellan of Incomputech.com. Royalty-free music as long as you give the dude his props. All right, it's that time of the week again. Time for the Kevin Long Show. And I'm your host, Kevin Long, and today I have two special guests. John and Roxy from PassionNerdly, and also members of the Southgate Media Group. Welcome.
Thank you very much. We're happy to be here.
So I have a few reasons behind this episode. One, I want to talk about I can't say it any better than John can, maybe even worse, the Independent Designer Guild group.
Yeah. Oh, Independent Game Designer Network.
Perfect.
Yeah. John gets it all confused all the time.
I know. I watched the videos at Gen Con.
Oh my goodness. So many acronyms. Well, it's one of those things. I mean, you have the Independent Game Designers Network, and then there's the gaming website that does all the tech deals and everything else, which is IDGN. So I get the two confused all the time because their email shows up in my email all the time. So, yeah.
It's okay. I'm a member of the Board Game Designers Guild of Utah, and I have to slow down and think about it all the time, too.
Yeah. It's just easier when you actually say it without the acronym.
Right.
Honestly.
And then...
Yeah, he can, I was going to say, he can wax poetic about the IGDN all day. Yeah.
Perfect, because I want to know more about that, and I'm sure the listeners do, too. I don't know how much you want to talk about your world setting / game, because I know it's still in development.
Oh, I'll happily talk about portions of it. I probably won't go much into mechanics.
I just want to know about the world, because I'm trying to do this new segment in my show where we talk about worlds and settings and things like that. Like, I would have a guest come on, and all we would talk about is why they like Ravenloft or Spelljam or whatever.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And then...
Right. So, where do you want to...
And then my final thing is I'm trying to start doing this thing where we get women gamers on. So what better way to start all of this project with you guys, because you have a world, you know about the game network, and Roxy's a lady.
Yeah, I'm a lady gamer.
A lady gamer.
Yeah, absolutely. So where would you like to start off?
Let's start with the Game Designer Network and meeting them at Gen Con.
Yeah. So I actually became aware of the Independent Game Designer Network when I went to Gen Con about 2-3 years ago. I managed to go, and I had seen this game. It was on Kickstarter called The Ninja Crusade. And the writer for this game, the creator behind it, is this gentleman known as Eloy Lasanta. And he is out of Florida, and I was like, I would really like to do an interview with you. And it was the first interview I ever did involving game. And so I sat down and talked to him, and I found out that he was the president at the time, Game Designer Network. Spoke to me, and he kind of laid out everything that they do and what the idea of it is. So, Designer Network is this grouping of both, smaller game companies and larger game companies, or groups, even individual creators who are attempting to put out games. And people that are in it that everyone should know to some extent, John Wick with 7 Seas. That's a major setting right there in a Game Designer Network. You also have Masks: A New Beginning, which came out from Magpie Games, which has hit really big and been on several actual plays. So you have these bigger settings like that. You have smaller games, or games that game creators that are just getting started, such as Jinkies, which is a powered by the apocalypse game that uses the 1970s mystery cartoon as the trope that designs and runs the game. Everybody plays these different roles in the party.
That's cool.
And so the idea behind the Independent Game Designer Network is to bring together, obviously, independent people to one location. I mean, that's the primary goal. is introducing you to all these people, and they have resources for their people where it's like, are you looking for illustrators? Are you looking for layout specialists? Are you looking for writers? Here are our people who are associated with us. Here is our little board where you can go and talk to all these people. And do you have questions about Kickstarter and how that works? Here are our people. Now, at the same time, the Independent Game Designer Network is not an open membership. Uh, there is an application process where you do have to apply to join, and it is not everybody gets in. The idea is that they do kind of try to be a little bit discerning of people who are very serious about wanting to get into this. And at the same time, and here's what I really do like about the Independent Game Designers Network, is that they specifically try to elevate marginalized groups. So they go out of their way for trying to bring in and incorporate people who are people of color, women of color, people who are of different gender identities. Not a lot of people, but there are people out there that's like, why? Why are you doing this? Everybody just supported equally. And the reality is that mining world of a white boys club designers make up that core audience and that core group. And the idea is that get into your foot in the door. You have to know somebody to really get your foot in. A lot of times there are things out there, resources that are not available to everyone. And this is another part of the Independent Game Designers Network, is that there is a convention. I'm trying to remember which one it is, but it's a convention, but it's not so much a convention. The idea is that is a gathering, and it's an expensive gathering at that. Creators games, and you have to pay to get in. It's in the ballpark of about $2,000 to attend this thing. That is it. Metatopia, and you have the opportunity to sit down, New Jersey, and you have the opportunity to sit down with the big names, the game design, bringing your game to them and showing it to them, and having their feedback and their instruction firsthand, as well as attending all these different classes and lectures on the overall concept of game creation. And the Independent Game Designer Network has a scholarship that it awards every year to several different people. So it's an opportunity for people who would not have that, to not have that foot in the door, to be able to do something like that.
That sounds...
that right there, and in the nutshell, that is the Independent Game Designer Network.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to go check it out.
Nutshell.
And then after...
That's a huge nutshell. I have so much respect for them and their creators, and honestly, they put out some amazing games.
Yeah.
And how much you want me to talk on this? Because I can just keep going.
I think that's good for now. We might have to have you come back on later, but
yeah,
I'm definitely gonna have to go check it out. And after I find it and get all that stuff done, I'll put a link in the show notes so everybody else can go find it too.
Yeah, we've actually got a local game designer. We kind of introduced her to the IGDN, and so this was her first Gen Con that she got to go to, and her stuff, like a banner for her book, has been on display at C2 and was also here at Gen Con, and so she was super excited.
Yeah, I mean, imagine as a creator having your associating your product with the Independent Game Designer Network, and them going to all the major conventions without you necessarily having to be there and shopping your book out to other people. It raises your exposure so much.
That's cool. Now I have another question. What is her book?
Her book is Every Verse RPG. And she published it. It's actually her husband's system. He came up with it like 30 years ago, I think.
Yeah.
And after he passed away a few years ago, she decided to publish it posthumously in tribute to him. And it's a really unique system. It's really not hard to pick up. We did a demo of it at an International Tabletop Day event last year, I believe. But it's a percentage-based system, but not like percentile dice. You roll 4 d10s, and it makes a 4-digit number, and then there's a probability table or something that you actually see where that 4-digit number falls onto this table, and determines your level of success or failure.
That is really cool.
Yeah, so I definitely recommend it's Everyverse RPG.
Her name is Deborah Parizek, and the company's name is Pardon Us Gaming. All one word, PARDENUS.
Sweet.
So yeah, I highly recommend checking that out. She is a great lady. That, like I said, this was her first Gen Con. She was super excited. She had a few tables playing her game on Saturday.
Oh,
and
nice.
It was really good to see, over a dozen people looking at this game that you're only going to find in the IGDN. I mean, there was no other. The likelihood of someone stumbling upon it. Sorry about that. The likelihood of somebody stumbling upon it was almost nil until she got that kind of coverage. So we've had her on the show before, and she actually came to the store I work at for, I believe, Free RPG Day this year. So
that's really cool.
We've had a good time with her. She's a very wonderful woman.
And I think I listened to the show with her. Like,
yeah,
that's awesome.
She was one of our first interviews, I think,
pretty early on. Yeah.
So aside from the IDGN, got it. What else was at Gen Con? Like, I want to go someday, but
there's so much. And I to be honest, I probably do not utilize all the opportunities or take advantage of all the opportunities that are there, because there is literally so much. And like, John had a press badge this year, but he's still learning how to use that press badge to his advantage.
Very true.
So you know Matt Quiet, and he can talk his way into a bank vault, I think, with his press badge. It's pretty nuts, the stuff things to do that we just don't think about. But so a lot of board games that are up and coming, which of course is at least my primary interest. I mean, I love RPGs, but board gaming is kind of my thing. And then we got to do the Star Trek Adventures big fleet event that Matt wrote up. And we had a ton of fun doing that for 2 days. Looking forward to doing that again for Modifius. There's so much neat stuff coming out. And it really is just, you're bombarded with just thing after thing after thing. I mean, there were some demos I wanted to get into, but 65,000 people in a convention center.
Right.
It's hard to get in line. I wanted to eat and sleep and sit down at some point too, so I didn't do as much.
Yeah. But for Gen Con this year, on the RPG side, this was the official launch of Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Yep.
So they had, of course, their standard floor space. You had Modifius was there, and they, of course, were doing all their Star Trek stuff, which is great. They were talking about a couple other games that are going to be coming out from them. They're really getting into the distribution side, and right behind there actually had demos going and introductions going for the new Alien RPG based on by Ridley Scott. Let's see, other stuff that was there this year. Of course, this is a big year for Cyberpunk. You have Shadowrun 6th Edition and Cyberpunk Red, which are both hitting post-Gen Con with their main books. You had, I'm trying to think who else. There were a lot of things getting released this year. Stuff that I didn't even know about, like, Eclipse Phase. They had their new book there at Gen Con, and it looked so pretty.
Really? I didn't see it. I know a lot of people picked it up.
Expanse, the RPG, was
there.
there.
The RPG was there.
From Green Ronin. And I'm trying to think. I mean, literally, you're just... The thing about Gen Con, I actually did
everywhere. Everywhere you look, it's like, oh, new thing. Oh, new thing.
I did a video, and it's in our YouTube channel, and I walked from one corner of the floor to the other, and it took 18 minutes.
Wow.
And this was the main dealer hall. 18 minutes from one corner to the other. And then I went into the tournament area, and that was another 5 minutes walking from one end of the tournament area.
And that's not even everything that was going on.
That's 2 areas out of this immense,
The entire Sagamore Ballroom at the Convention Center is reserved for Paizo, I think, every year.
Yes.
And it's just literally Pathfinder Society and Starfinder Society games.
Wow.
In the hallways, I don't know if you saw this, but I walked past all the Reaper. There were speed painting contests on, I think it was Saturday.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, it was like, I thought it was just this one table of speed painters, but then I looked over and there was like probably a half a dozen or more additional tables, probably way more than that. It was rows of tables of just people painting minis in a Reaper speed painting contest.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say that sounds like an interesting concept. Speed painting.
Yeah. I took a picture of the sign. I didn't look too closely because there were a lot of people that were kind of watching. But yeah, it was really interesting. There was a ton of, and in fact, down at Citadel or Army Painter booth, I think it was Citadel. They had free painting lessons going on for painting miniatures.
That's cool.
And I mean, there's a ton of stuff that you don't even think of. I mean, when we've gone on to after you get your badge, and once they start releasing to where you can start picking events that you would like to go to, I mean, there's thousands. You can't do everything. There's no way to do everything at Gen Con.
Oh, yeah.
But we saw some live shows for some actual play, or we saw a live show for an actual play that I really like. We always try to make the podcasting panels. This was the first year that we did not. There were no Nerds Domain podcasting panels since we've been aware of them.
Yeah.
So last year, John was a part of a few. So there was none of that to worry about because we were gaming for 5 hours, at the start of every day. But yeah, we always try to go to the podcasting and streaming panels because our goal someday is to get into Twitch streaming and actual play.
I hear that goal.
Yeah. We're trying to get into that because it's really popular right now. And I mean, my cousins started an actual play of D&D 5th Ed homebrew, and for really no other reason except they wanted to. it's like we're having a game, we have the stuff. Why don't we do this? We like shows that do this. So it's becoming, as long as you don't expect to be, Critical Role day one, I think it's a really fun outlet and just to kind of add another interactive element to your game. So
For sure.
I try to go to those panels every year to see what the people that are successful at it are suggesting for technology and equipment and just general tips. Like the panel I went to this year was literally just for GMs and players that are doing any kind of streaming or podcasting. And they were like, remember that you're on a microphone. That sounds like a dumb thing to say, but people forget sometimes that you're on a microphone. And if you're on camera, remember you're on camera. So don't pick your nose or don't
sit there on your cell phone.
Yeah, don't
Right.
because some really great tips came out of it. I'm hoping they release their panel as a podcast because the people that I went and saw, they run a podcast called Experience Pointers, and I would love to see. I would love to have that to share with people, so I don't have to rely on my memory and my hastily thumb typed notes. But it was really good and brought up some interesting concepts, even about like railroading and things like that in those narrative scenarios, and it was a good thing. And so I think Gen Con is great for those kinds of things where you don't just have to go and play games, which is what we all want to do. There's a lot of really good information shared in the panel rooms.
Oh yeah.
Sweet.
Highly recommend going to panels.
That sounds like a good segue to the next section. Is the nerd domain is PassionNerdly actual play going to be another Wooden Dojo story, or is it going to be the PassionNerdly product that hasn't been announced yet?
For which? The game I'm working on?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Uh-oh.
the audio's...
Our audio's cutting out. Sorry, Kevin.
That's okay. Can you hear me okay?
Are you okay now? Yeah. Can you just repeat that question for us?
I sure can. Is the PassionNerdly Twitch live stream AP going to be another story in the Wooden Dojo, or is it going to be the game that John's working on?
Probably none of the above.
Okay.
Yeah, probably kind of we're trying to we might be spreading ourselves a little bit thin, I guess, but we have some ideas. We are working a little bit with Matt Quiet from the Nerds Domain. PassionNerdly is considered Nerds Domain South. We are part of them as well.
Right.
So anything that we kind of do, we try to include Matt as much as possible because he's a great creative mind, and he's also got really good organizational chops that sometimes John and I really don't necessarily think about. We just want to play games, man.
Well,
we just want to have a good time.
I'm more the creative type, and organization is not my strong point. In fact,
you are not a Virgo.
I do horrible trying to figure out how to fit all my interviews and other things I've got in my brain rattling around.
Yeah, I have to kind of keep John on an agenda. If I know he's got something planned. If I don't know he's got something planned, then he's
God
just
help us all.
yeah, he's on his own, and we'll catch up when we get there. But yeah, so I don't know how much we're at liberty to say, but it will be an established property, an established module for said property. Yeah. Well, I think we can say the system is probably going to be Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
At least to start, and that might not be like the only system we play, but I think it's where we're going to start and test run it.
That's cool. That didn't necessarily go the way I planned it to go, but it was still good information.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. If we're looking for a segue into John's property, yeah, he'll just talk about Il Cartan, as much as he wants.
Absolutely.
he's loving it right now. He's been spending a lot of time with it lately.
Well, I guess go ahead and tell us everything. Well, maybe not everything, but I don't know, a good 20 minutes of anything that you can tell us about.
Yeah, no, I'll to touch on it. This all started off originally as a vision, like many other worlds that are out there that are for role-playing games. This started off as a world that was homebrewed by a friend of mine who is involved with our show, Tome Travelers, Sam Howard.
Sam Howard.
He created a world, and a few years after he created it, I started to get to game in it, and we shared ideas back and forth. And over time, we were this this would be a lot of fun to actually make into a world. And it started off that we were like, okay, we'll make it for Dungeons and Dragons. And when Pathfinder, came out, we're like, oh, well, this converted over to Pathfinder. That's not a hard conversion, right? 3.5 to Pathfinder. And of course, the side note of this, as we're doing all this, because this for us was more of a labor of love, not a labor of time frame or anything like that. Every day, someone else put out something, or copyrighted something, or made something that just really kind of bogged the process down for us. Just different things that we thought, we all think that we're being original, we're doing something different. And then you find out somebody else has a product that's almost just like it, or is doing something that you thought. And so for a while there, this game got shelved. And then, in the last year, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to revive this property, and I am going to make it into its own thing based on our original vision. I'm leaving Sam and I are not, combat based or, DMs. Even when we were playing Dungeons and Dragons, we were more about the story. And honestly, we'd forget about experience points, and we'd be like, level your character up. I'll figure out something to throw at him. So I was like, okay, I'm going to make it a story-based world. And I'm going to start over from the scratch, from the original notes, which has been a lot of fun to go back and find some of our notes and be like, okay, let's take this, from here, we'll bring it in. And so that's been a lot of fun for me. But essentially, I mean, if we're talking about the world, it comes down off of, say, maybe 2 or 3 different concepts. Primary concept, a world where are, to some extent, cut off from each other, was a curse put upon the ocean in this world called Il Cartan. The curse upon the ocean is the moment that anything leaves sight of shore, see the shores anymore. Unseen, unknown force for this curse upon the waters would kill them. And so it isolated all the nations. But ended up being this fairy figure, created magical gateways to reunite all the world. And in this process, created essentially mass travel, where today, we drive everywhere, we fly everywhere. Our goods and our services to anywhere around the world at any time, and we are more connected now than we've ever been. Imagine that level of connection in a medieval age, or in this case, a kind of Renaissance age, where you walk through one gate in one city on the other side of the world, and you're all of a sudden in another city. And on top of that, there's little parts, like there's a lot of duality in this book, where it is, magic is commonplace, while technology only exists to do what magic cannot. Or magic is too expensive. And so technology now is that thing people resort to when they can't do magic.
That's cool.
Yeah. Civilization. Our westernized idea of a city being out in the countryside, because now you don't have to travel countryside unless you really want to. All these large, almost megalithic cities exist. Travel from one to another instantaneously. Countryside. So all of a sudden, the countryside and the wilds are much more dangerous. Much more. It's almost like you go out beyond the cities and you are isolated. Safety. There's really not that many other people other than the farms and other things that feed civilization. And so there's that duality of the rural versus the urban. In this world, the gods are much more active. We took more of a cue from the mythology of the pantheon in ancient Roman Greece, where the gods, mixed with the people, appeared to them quite often, that sort of thing. And we made that a part of the world. But so, I mean, it's this world where, all these things that are two different sides of a coin are, very stark differences make up this place. And that's just on, the, that level of the game. There's a whole nother side to it when we're getting into the design of it.
That's really cool.
So
it's going to be really cool. He's still got quite a bit of work left on it that he's been pitching out to some writers.
Yeah.
To try to get some little blurbs and things, and we still have pre-gen characters to create, but hopefully sometime, next year?
I'm hoping for a release, like an actual full release next year.
That's cool.
So, yeah, it'll be good.
How do you guys find creating pre-gens? Because I write a lot, and I enjoy it, and then I get to the pre-gens, and I'm like, oh, crap, do I really have to do this?
We just came off a weekend where we were trying to create 40 pre-gens for Star Trek Adventures. And, after about 15 of those, I think Matt and I Matt was like, what if we create 20 and then copy paste? And I was like, that's not a bad idea. We have that's a lot of unique characters, and I mean, they were all going to be on different ships, so it wasn't like you were going to ever have two of the same on the same ship. But I like pre-gens if I have time to think about putting them in the world.
Yeah.
If I'm just rolling pre-statted characters for a quick game, like for instance, our game store does Introduction to D&D on Thursday nights. And the guy who is organizing that whole endeavor, because we have about a dozen GMs that rotate, every week it's a one night, one shot, one adventure, and it's just really to give new players or old players a place to play, and if they're new, learn the mechanics. And he's created an entire book of pre-gens, and it's divided nicely. You can tell he's some sort of project manager or something, because it's divided nicely into what class they are, but there's a few different options depending on the class, and depending on the race, but like, they have no real solid, as far as I can tell from flipping through the book, they have no real solid concept or background, where when you're making a pre-gen for a game book or a game in a world or in a predefined story that you want to tell, they have to fit in somehow.
Right.
They have to link in with the world. We have not had to do that too much.
Yeah, but
so far.
I think it also, if we're talking about in general, pre-gen characters is really a big thing of the system as well, because looking at your classic either D&D Pathfinder, the first question you ask a person, like, what do you want to play? The immediate response is usually, oh, I want to play this class. And so that's like the first question that comes out of people's mouth is, oh, I want to be a bard, or I want to be warrior, I want to be fighter. And then they come up with the idea of, oh, what race are you going to be? Or, what is your character's heritage? And that's the second thing that comes out usually. I mean, or they kind of juxtapose. But so that's in those systems. A lot of the systems I stick to as far as character creation go, the mechanics of actually making the character of a pre-gen is would be telling a story where like I think the chakra system by Third Eye Games does it really well.
Yeah, and I mean,
yeah,
we're kind of partial to that one because John actually paid to have a pre-gen put in the Empire's Reign book. So
yeah,
that's cool.
So one of my characters is actually a pre-gen in that game, and we had to modify her to fit into that.
Yeah. But the character, instead of all these qualities like race or or the class or any of these things aren't a part of the character creation process in a lot of these games. It's more of, okay, and it's very similar to Battletech and Traveler, towards like, where was your character born? That becomes a part of your character stats. What were your parents doing? That becomes a part of your character stats. Where did you grow up? What were you doing? And then like the big question being, what propelled you into the life that you are doing now? What was the event that made you want to become an adventurer or take part in this game? And those storytelling style games, those are almost my preference. But at those, it's pretty easy to do a pre-gen character, because it's just like, okay, well, I'll just pick one at random. So they were an orphan. Why not? That's a classic adventure beginning.
Sure.
And then you just go one by one by one.
They either had no parent, or they don't know what happened to their parents, or their parents were tragically lost. I mean, that is a classic character background. Even when we had the young girls game D&D in my shop, that one little girl was like, "I have parents, but they died mysterious circumstances," and she like would repeat that every once in a while to come. She goes, "No, I had a mother, mysterious circumstances."
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was. That is a common trope in pre-gen characters.
Yeah, but for me, I mean, so I like to look at it from that process, that story-based process, rather than saying, okay, what am I going to make? And I find that in those cases, it's a little bit easier, but it does take longer. That's the downside. Rather than just saying, I'm going to be a dragonborn barbarian. Let's throw this together. Okay, roll up those stats. I'm done.
Yeah. No, yeah. I will say, for pre-gen characters, like for an adventure, Star Trek Adventure's character creator was actually really, really helpful.
Yes.
It had a lot of information available
and that's
in one place online.
And
that's cool.
Is definitely a trend now, is online resources to make your characters that
you almost
simplify
have to.
the process.
As long as D&D Beyond and things like Hero Lab are going to be in existence, you have to it's almost like you're going to have something that people can just access from a tablet or I don't know. I think the Star Trek generator would be difficult on a phone, but at least from a tablet or a laptop. So just for ease of access, nobody wants to cart stacks of books around anymore.
Right.
It's just we all chiropractors love it, but the rest of us do not.
I had to make 48 pre-gens for DCC RPG.
Oh wow. Okay.
And it took me 3 hours.
yeah.
But by the time I got to 20, I'm just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you make them 4 at a time, and it just, by the time I got to the 6th page, I'm just like, maybe I'll just have 4 players instead of 6.
Yeah, exactly. We're just going to stop here.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think they're great, but they can be time consuming from a creation standpoint.
For sure. I guess that brings us to our last topic, women in gaming.
Yeah.
And I guess, where did it start for you?
Yeah. So my gaming history, to some people, I'm probably some level of experienced gamer by now. I still feel like a noob most of the time. I grew up around old school Fundy Baptists that didn't talk about D&D, because not necessarily, I was never really told that it was evil, but we just didn't talk about it. And then I found out years later that like my best friend and her parents Well, my best friend wasn't playing, but her parents used to play, and I was like, "Hey, he was our pastor." That's not fair. That's not fair. My getting into gaming really started for me, and I kind of have to prequel it or prologue it, I guess, by saying it was kind of ruined for me at first. My first introduction to tabletop gaming, besides American style board games, which I loved as a kid. I played a lot of Clue. Clue still ranks as one of my favorite games, even though it's really simplistic, comparatively speaking, and there are so many games that do what it does
it's
better
number
now.
2 on my list.
yeah. I loved Clue. My mom liked Scrabble. So I played a lot, and I had all the Sorry, Trouble, all the games that were popular when I was a kid in the 90s and late 80s. But my first introduction to like role playing was my best friend's ex-husband, or now ex-husband. They were married at the time, and he was just brutal. And even today, when he games with my nephew, I call her son my nephew. When he games with him, even my nephew goes, "Well, that doesn't really count as playing D&D because Dad doesn't play it the way that it's meant to be played." His dad looks at it as if if he's a GM, if he doesn't kill you, he's lost. It's a win-lose situation for him, and his job as the GM is to kill the player. And I can't stand that. He would get really angry about stuff if a roll didn't go right. And I was like, I don't want any part of this. And that was the only exposure to it that I had. Forward years almost, or a little less. But in 2014, stumbled upon Will Wheaton's Tabletop YouTube. And I was like, oh, Crusher. And what is he talking about? What are these games? I've never heard of these. And that started my board game obsession. That then, Critical Role came after I met John. And I was already expanding into role-playing games because Tabletop did an episode with the Dragon Age RPG.
I saw that episode.
I loved the Dragon Age video game. So I was like, oh my gosh, there's another way I can play in this world. This is a great fantasy world. And so I was kind of interested. And then as a joke, I signed up for a geeky dating site. It was a joke, kind of. It was a joke on the surface, but I was like, well, if I meet a cool geek, that's cool. And I happened to I met John through there within like a few days. And he was this lifetime gamer. He'd been gaming for almost 30 years by the time we met. And so it was really through him that I started really getting into it. We started with Pathfinder. I joined their gaming group. And now we do all this stuff at home, and we kind of make our own gaming groups. And because we like to do the podcast recording, and we've got one of these nice old tables of Ultimate Gaming, which I like to play games on. So, but yeah, that's kind of where it started for me. Was the YouTubes is what piqued my interest.
That's cool. Can you hear the wind?
Sorry?
I said, can you hear the wind?
No, can't. Thankfully, no.
That's good, because I don't necessarily want that.
Did you hear dogs barking earlier? I put them outside.
I can, but that doesn't bother me. Like, I have kids, and they know that if the door's closed, don't come in. But, they're kids. They still do. But there's a storm that just rolled in, and the wind is really loud. I wanted to know if you guys could hear it.
I hear it at the moment. Who knows? It may get louder.
It might. I keep waiting for something to come crashing through my window.
That's a pretty bad storm.
Well, like, we don't... In the county that I live in, we had a microburst like 20 years ago, but like there have been 3 tornadoes in Salt Lake County, and you never know. Like, statistically, there shouldn't be a tornado in Utah, but they happen.
That's for sure. I grew up in tornado country, so I'm very familiar. Texans don't seem to really know what to do sometimes, but they also drive in hurricanes, so
that's crazy. Like, we get tons of snow every winter, and yet somehow people that have lived here their entire lives forget how to drive in the snow when summer hits. So all winter, it's a mess because I don't know how to drive in the snow.
In the snow? And the snow is the easy part. It's the ice that gets scary.
Right.
So that's, yeah. No, I hear that. That's one thing. John had to learn how to drive in snow in early 2018 when we went to visit my parents up in the Midwest.
I had never seen snow like that in my life.
And it wasn't really that bad, but he was horrified.
I grew up on the north side of Dallas, and snow there, it basically falls and sits and turns into ice almost instantaneously.
Right.
And so, you know, you could not make snowballs. If you went out and tried to pull up some of the snow, you were going to pull up your yard with it.
Yeah.
And so here I am. I'm in Kansas City. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is unreal. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Can your dad drive home?
Yeah.
Anyway, that has nothing to do with gaming, but
yeah, but still, sidetrack, whatever.
Yeah.
So,
but
now that you're hooked, what's next? I mean, you got you want to do the AP Twitch thing, like what's next for Roxy?
What's next for me is I've actually got some behind the scenes projects that I'm working on. I actually got to talk to a guy at just as in case I'm sure your listeners don't know, but I actually do some layout design, page layout for adventureaweek.com.
My listeners might not know, but I do.
Okay. Yeah. So I do some page layout for Adventure Week and really enjoy that. I usually do a lot of mini, which are the little 2 to 4 page dungeons that they'll send out with it. It's got a map, and it's just kind of a supplementary thing that you can either run as a one-shot or run as a supplement to your campaign. You know, they find a location and ta-da, here's a bunch of elementals or something. But so I do that. I actually got to talk to some years ago. It's been 2 or 3. I think it was like during the Star Trek Adventures playtest. I saw that Modiphius had a call out for writers and graphic designers, and I had submitted a resume and showed interest. Heard nothing, forgot all about it. Got an email like the weekend before Gen Con and asking if I was still interested, and I was like, well, yes.
That's
yes,
really
I
cool.
am. You do produce my current favorite game on the market, which is the Star Trek Adventure System. But so I got to talk with their RPG, the head of their RPG stuff, while I was there, and he was actually the gentleman that had emailed me. And so I think I'm going to start doing stuff for them too, which is pretty exciting for me. From just getting to work with a property and even Star Trek being something that I was raised around. Getting to work with that and actually make money for it. It feels like a kind of a nice little boost to supplement just the stuff that I normally do for Adventure Week. So I'm excited about that. I'll be doing that. As far as where next we're going, as part of PassionNerdly, we are getting ready to get some more Wooden Dojo stuff put out. We kind of went on an unintentional hiatus just because the summer has been hectic and schedules are schedules. We're all adults having different things to do, and we live kind of in 3 different places. But so we're going to get some more Wooden Dojo out. We've got some good things planned for Tome Travelers coming up. And for me, I'm really just focusing also on the game store that I work at. I don't own it or anything. I'm just a games clerk, but I'm probably their board game person besides the owner. So I'm really going to be pushing to do a lot more demos and get families and people back to gaming at the table. I love video games. I've played video games my entire life, and I don't blame them for anything. But I know that technology, the way it is today, has kind of really limited our ability to socialize I'm trying to think of a word, but I would almost say responsible manner. Even in my case, I have a hard time ending a conversation. I was like, there was a time when I knew how to end a conversation, but now I'm so used to my phone or things like that, or an email that I can just send off, or a text message I don't have to answer. That I don't know how to end a conversation. So I'm really wanting to bring people into the board game and tabletop gaming side of things. And I would love, John and I have discussed some options for twitching and or podcasting from a board game side of things. And I know that market is probably more crowded than the RPG one, because there's a lot of guys that do board gaming stuff. But we have some ideas that I think are kind of interesting for some podcasting variants on board games. And I'm excited to kind of see where that goes. But we haven't really finalized anything, so I can't really divulge a whole lot. But
That's
I
all
would love
good.
to do some. I would love to do some board game based dramatic podcasting, if you can even fathom what that might be. so
Hey, if they
you
could
know,
make a movie off of Clue, I'm sure we could make a podcast.
see, exactly. Something like that. And so I'm very excited to kind of get to working on that. Gen Con and the vacation, because I was off work for about a week beforehand, and having that week and a half to kind of just recuperate and think about what my vision and goals were for the podcast, for the store, and just for my board gaming in general, or my tabletop gaming presence and schedule, essentially. I got very excited about some things. So definitely the Twitch thing, I'm hoping by probably in the fall, maybe we may start that. And we're going to get Wooden Dojo. We should have new episodes coming out within the month of Wooden Dojo. And Tome Travelers will have a new episode on Monday. So
Sweet.
it'll be good stuff.
Well, before we end this conversation, is there anything else either of you want my listeners to know about?
Oh, not really.
I think we've covered it all. I'm trying to remember if there's anything else, but I think we've touched all our shows. Go ahead, John.
No, just say, I mean, if they want to know more about us, just go by PassionNerdly.com is our main website where we have our podcasts available, and we also do blog posts that aren't found anywhere else.
Sure. And I mean, our social media, John is at PassionNerdly, and it's spelled like it sounds, PassionNerdly, and I am Rooworks, which is ROOWERKS. And you can find us on all the social medias. We're out there and we're saying stuff, whether people like it or not. That's right.
I'm also going to make a plug for you guys that you can find Passion Nerdly on Coffee and support them. They are in the process of helping Sam get new equipment.
Yes.
So there's that. So if you want to branch out from my podcast, you can go listen to theirs. I love the Wooden Dojo.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
And so I guess that brings us to an end of another episode. So for me and John and Roxy, mahalo and have a great day.
See y'all.
Again, thank you for listening to The Kevin Long Show. You can find us on Facebook by searching The Kevin Long Show. You can find us on Twitter at The Kevin Long SH1, or you can email the show at thekevinlongshow.com.